want you to try a little experiment with me, just for a second. Just engage your imagination.
Okay.
You're sitting there, maybe you're on your commute, maybe you're at your desk, and your phone buzzes.
Yeah.
You know, that double vibration that usually means something important?
Right.
You look down, and there's a red breaking news banner across the lock screen.
The kind that, usually stops your heart for a second.
Right. And the text says that the United States and Iran have moved one step closer to actual full-scale war. Maybe a ship was seized in the Strait of Hormuz, or a drone was shot down, or diplomatic mission was evacuated.
It's a terrifying scenario. I mean, on paper at least.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
But I want you, and you, our listener, to be totally brutally honest with yourself here. If you saw that specific alert today, right this second, would you actually be shocked? Would you gasp? Would you immediately call your family to tell them to pack a bag?
Or would it just feel strangely familiar?
That really is the million-dollar question.
Would it feel like a catastrophe, or would it just be another notification that doesn't quite interrupt your lunch?
Exactly. And that specific feeling, or I should say that distinct lack of feeling, is what we are unpacking today. We've pulled together a really fascinating stack of sources, articles, geopolitical analysis, psychological studies that analyze U.S.-Iran relations. But we aren't doing the usual thing. We're not talking about nuclear centrifuges or troop movements.
No, and frankly, if we did, half the audience would probably tune out. What we're looking at is, I think, much more interesting. We're looking at a phenomenon called normalized tension.
We're looking at what happens to the human brain and to global politics when the threat of war stops feeling like a threat.
And the sources argue that this psychological shift, this, transition from emergency to background noise, is actually more dangerous than the conflict itself.
It's a study in how high-stakes conflicts transform. They start as these emergencies that demand immediate action.
But over time, they calcify. They become infrastructure that we just live inside, like the plumbing or the electrical grid.
So let's dive in, because I think we need to establish a baseline here. I'm old enough, and I think most of us are, to remember when the word war meant something different.
It used to be a showstopper. I mean, it was the ultimate interruption.
Right. If we go back 10, maybe 15 years, if you heard escalation in the Gulf or imminent strike, the world physically stopped.
It forced a reaction. That's the key difference the sources really highlight. In the past, think about the financial markets. If a whisper of war came out...
oil prices would spike instantly.
Instantly. Algorithms would go crazy. Leaders would cancel vacations to hold emergency press conferences.
People would literally stop what they were doing to watch the news. I remember moments where you would walk into a bar or an airport and everyone is just staring at the same TV screen.
In total silence. It had gravity. It had a center of mass that pulled everyone in.
But now, the source material makes this really sharp observation about the contrast. Think about the last few escalations we've seen in the last, few years. Maybe it was a retaliatory airstrike.
Or a new round of heavy sanctions, or a cyber attack.
And let's be clear, the supply of urgency from the media hasn't changed.
Oh, not at all. The headlines are always the same. They're always written in that breathless, urgent tone. Breaking news, all caps.
Red font, exclamation points.
Precisely. The language remains severe. Brink of war, unprecedented escalation. But the demand for that urgency, the public reaction...
It's totally muted. It's like shouting into a pillow.
It is. Muted. There is no global panic. There is no moment where the world collectively holds its breath.
And the analysis points out something really interesting here about the information landscape.
Yeah. The threat of war is no longer just competing with other news stories. It's competing with entertainment.
That's a depressing thought. You mean a potential missile strike is competing with my TikTok feed?
It's competing with sports highlights, memes, viral videos, the newest Netflix drop, the influencer drama of the week.
And it's losing.
And frankly, in the battle for attention, the war is losing.
So why is that? Is it just that we're shallow? Is it just that we're distracted? Or is it something deeper?
It's not just distraction. The sources argue it's about repetition. It's the cry wolf effect, but on a massive geopolitical scale.
Okay, but in the boy who cried wolf story, eventually the wolf shows up and eats the sheep. That's the moral of the story.
And that's the danger here too. But psychologically, we adapt to the noise before the wolf arrives.
Right, we tell ourselves, oh, they've done this before. Tensions flared in 2019, in 2020, and 2024.
Nothing catastrophic happened. The world didn't end, so it's under control. That is the coping mechanism.
It's rationalization.
It is, but this deep dive challenges that assumption pretty hard. The authors ask a very pointed question. Controlled by whom and for how long?
Because it hasn't happened yet is not the same thing as it won't happen.
Not at all. And there's another question. At what cost? That's the part we miss. We think no war means peace. But the sources argue we are living in a third state. It's not war.
But it's definitely not peace.
It's permanent, managed friction, and human beings are incredibly adaptable to friction.
This reminds me of living next to a train track. I had a friend who lived right next to a commuter line. The first week, the train wakes you up every single night.
You panic, your heart races.
Every time. By month 2, you don't even hear it. You literally sleep through 100 tons of steel screaming past your head.
That is the perfect analogy. You've habituated to the hazard. The hazard hasn't changed. The train is still huge, loud, and dangerous if you step on the tracks. But your brain has decided it's not relevant information anymore.
So how does this happen on a global scale? I mean, how do we get from panic to background noise? The source material points directly to the language we use.
This is where the analysis gets really linguistic. If you actually parse the official statements from, say, the State Department or foreign ministries during these flare-ups, there's a distinct pattern.
Yeah, let's look at the vocabulary. It's almost like a code.
Every single escalation is wrapped in qualifiers. Have you noticed? It's
Yeah.
always temporary, limited,
Necessary.
proportional.
Right. This is just a limited strike to deter aggression.
This is just a temporary defensive measure.
Exactly. It's always framed as an exception,
Mhm.
a deviation from the norm. We are doing this one thing, just this once, to fix the problem.
But here is the trap, and I love this insight from the analysis. Exceptions aren't supposed to repeat on a schedule.
Right. If you have a once-in-a-lifetime flood every February, it's not an exception anymore.
It's just the climate.
Bingo. If a limited strike happens every 6 months, it's not a strike, it's a policy. It settles in, it becomes routine.
And eventually, as one of the authors puts it, it becomes infrastructure. Infrastructure. That is such a heavy word for this. It implies it's built into the foundation of how the world works.
It implies concrete and steel.
Because it is. Let's look at the micro example they provided. Sanctions. This is probably the clearest evidence of temporary becoming permanent.
Oh, this is a great example.
Yeah.
Because we hear about sanctions so often we basically ignore them. Oh, more sanctions, put them on the pile with the others.
We do, but think about their original design. In, international relations theory, sanctions are a lever.
A tool.
A tool. You apply pressure to change a specific behavior. You squeeze the economy, the behavior changes, you lift the sanctions. That's the deal. It's supposed to be transactional.
But that's almost never what happens in reality, is it? When was the last time you heard about a major sanction package being fully lifted?
It's incredibly rare. I mean, look at the timeline. Years pass, administrations change, presidents come and go. But the sanctions,
They just accumulate.
they tend to just accumulate. It's like barnacles on a ship.
Or like that junk drawer in your kitchen. You put something in there thinking, I'll need this for a week, and 10 years later, it's still there.
It is exactly like the junk drawer of foreign policy. And at some point, they stop being a tool to fix a problem, and they start being the environment that the country lives in.
The economy rewires itself around the sanctions.
The black markets form. The targets adapt. That is a profound shift.
From a tool to an environment.
And that shifts the psychology.
Yeah.
Because if something in the environment, like the weather, you stop asking when it will end. You don't ask when will gravity end.
You just build your house to withstand it.
Precisely. So we are living inside this permanent tension. And the source makes a point that this specific type of conflict, this US-Iran style tension, is unique because it never really started, so it can't really end.
It's a state of limbo.
Complete limbo. Think about it. There is no peace treaty because there was never a declared war. There is no closure. There's no moment of accountability where both sides sit down at a table in Geneva and sign a document saying it's over.
The tension just stays. It hovers.
It hovers. And because it stays, human beings and systems adapt.
Let's talk about that adaptation. Because we see it everywhere, not just in psychology.
Look at the markets. We touched on this, but it's stark. The financial markets are incredibly efficient at pricing in risk. 10 years ago, a threat of war introduced uncertainty.
And markets hate uncertainty.
They hate it, so they crashed. But today,
The threat is a known quantity.
it's priced in. The risk of war is just another line item on the spreadsheet, like the price of copper or the interest rate. The market basically says,
Yeah, they might shoot at each other, but they probably won't stop the oil tankers, so we're good.
That is so cynical, but I guess it's rational. The algorithm has learned that the bark is worse than the bite.
And the officials have adapted too. I swear I've heard the same 3 sentences from government spokespeople for the last decade.
You definitely have. It's a script. We are monitoring the situation.
We are closely watching developments.
We retain the right to respond. It's like they're reading off a teleprompter that hasn't changed since 2010.
Why did they do that? Is it just laziness?
No, it's safety. The script works. It signals concern without committing to action. It maintains the status quo.
And the public learns the script too. We hear monitoring the situation, and we translate that to nothing is going to happen.
Right. So walk us through that cycle for the average person. How does it feel to live through this decade after decade?
Well, according to the analysis, it's a progression of desensitization. At first, the conflict feels unsettling. It's scary.
You pay attention.
Then as it repeats, it becomes familiar. You recognize the pattern. Oh, this is the part where they threaten us. And finally,
It becomes invisible.
invisible. That's frightening. The threat is still there. The missiles are real, but we literally can't see it anymore because our brains have edited it out to save energy.
Which leads us to a very uncomfortable question, a provocative question that the sources raise, and one that I think we really need to sit with.
Yeah. If this is so stressful, if this is so dangerous, and if it's so draining on our resources, why does it persist?
Why don't we fix it? Why don't we just sign a deal or fight it out?
Because permanent tension isn't an accident.
Uh-oh. Here comes the cynical part.
It is cynical, but it's practical. The source argues that permanent tension is useful.
Useful? Useful for whom?
For the people in power, on both sides. Think about the concept of leverage.
Okay, let's unpack leverage.
If you resolve the conflict, if you actually make peace, you lose your leverage. You lose the ability to rally your base against an external enemy. You lose the justification for emergency powers.
So it gives you power without responsibility.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It gives you emergency authority without an endpoint. You don't need to win the war. In fact, winning might be messy. Winning means you have to occupy territory or rebuild a nation. That's expensive and hard.
But maintaining the threat of war.
That's cheap,
Yeah.
and it's effective. It keeps the budgets inflated. It keeps the population rallied. It's a unifying force. We have to stay united because the enemy's at the gates.
That makes a disturbing amount of sense. It's like keeping a credit card open just in case, but on a geopolitical level.
You pay the minimum balance, the occasional airstrike, but you never pay off the principal.
And look at the tangible outcomes mentioned in the source. Defense budgets stay high because the threat is imminent.
Extraordinary surveillance measures stay justified because the crisis isn't over.
And diplomacy.
Diplomacy becomes a performance. It can always be postponed. Why rush to fix it today when the crisis is permanent?
There is no deadline. Since the war is never declared, the peace never has to be signed.
And the consequence of that, I assume, is that we get stuck.
We get stuck in a loop. The longer it lasts, the harder it becomes to imagine an alternative. We lose the ability to picture a world where this tension doesn't exist.
We forget what normal actually looks like.
This brings us to the climax of this deep dive.
Mhm.
Because I certainly usually think, that the danger in these situations is the explosion. The danger is that someone presses the wrong button, or a missile goes off course and boom.
World War III.
That is the conventional fear. That's the Hollywood movie version of the danger. And don't get me wrong, that is a real risk.
Accidents happen.
They do. But this analysis flips that on its head. It argues that the real danger isn't the escalation itself.
What is it?
It's acceptance.
Acceptance.
The real danger is when the threat becomes background, when fear loses its urgency, when people stop asking what comes next.
Because if we stop asking what comes next, we stop trying to prevent it.
Precisely. The source uses a vivid image here that I think everyone listening will recognize. They call it the scroll moment.
Oh, I related to this so hard when I read it. It hit a little too close to home.
Picture it. You're sitting on your couch, maybe you've got Netflix on in the background, a new alert appears on your phone, tensions rise in the Middle East, missile fired, sanctions imposed.
You glance at it, you register the words, and then what do?
I swipe it away.
You swipe it away. And I keep scrolling. I go right back to the cat video or the recipe for sourdough or the email from my boss.
And you don't do it because you're a bad person. I want to be clear about that. You don't do it because you don't care about the world or human suffering.
You do it because it feels expected.
It's just Tuesday.
Right. It's just Tuesday.
Right.
But here is the massive takeaway. When danger feels expected, it stops triggering resistance.
Wow.
Think about it physically. If you expect a punch, you flinch. But if you've been getting punched in the arm every day for 10 years, you stop flinching. You just take it.
And if you stop flinching.
If you expect the house to be on fire, you stop looking for the water hose. Just grab a fan.
And that is the point of maximum vulnerability. Because when there is no resistance, when the public is numb, there is no check on the escalation.
The guardrails fall off.
Exactly. The systems can do whatever they want because no one is watching closely anymore. We've given them a blank check because we're too bored to read the fine print.
That is heavy. But it's so true. We think we're being resilient by ignoring it, by keeping calm and carrying on, but actually we're just lowering our defenses.
We are telling our leaders, go ahead, do what you want. We aren't looking.
We're normalizing the abnormal.
And history tells us that when you normalize the abnormal tends to grow. It expands to fill the space you give it.
So, bringing this all back home. We started this deep dive talking about the US and Iran. That was our case study. But as we've gone through this, it's pretty clear this isn't just about two countries in the Middle East.
No. The source is very clear on this. This wasn't really about Iran, or even the United States. It was about what happens to the human mind and global systems when they learn to live inside a permanent threat.
It's a universal lesson about systems.
It is. It's about how temporary measures don't just stay, they spread.
They spread.
They spread from one country to entire systems. Once you accept that a temporary emergency can last for 40 years in foreign policy, you start accepting it in others.
You start accepting temporary economic crises that last a decade. You start accepting temporary surveillance that never goes away.
Because once normalization begins, it rarely stops where it started. The bar for what is acceptable just keeps getting lower.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is why we have to pay attention to that feeling of boredom. That boredom is a warning sign.
It's the check engine light of democracy.
So we're going to wrap up here, but I want to leave you, the listener, with that thought. And I want to go back to that moment we talked about, the scroll moment.
It's a moment worth examining next time it happens.
If a war alert appeared on your phone right now, right this second, would you stop what you're doing? Would you freeze?
Or would you just keep scrolling to the next video, the next email, the next post?
And more importantly, what does your answer say about the world we're living in?
Something to think about the next time you clear a notification without reading it.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.
We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.